to thinking long term, right? Because otherwise you're like, oh, well, let's just build this and get it out.
All right, it's 1:02. Let's go ahead and get started. Again, housekeeping, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. And then if you have questions through the presentation, go ahead and throw those in the chat. And we have a Q&A lined up for the end. Just to give you kind of an overview of where we're headed in this presentation, the power of skills and curriculum. We're gonna do some introductions. I'm gonna have Kacey share WGU's story, talk about Emsi's how and how we've supported that, and then go into a discussion. We're gonna keep this pretty brief and hopefully open up time for questions. And I guess with that, I'll go ahead and jump in by saying it's great to be here. I was just telling Kacey that my GSV is my favorite conference of the year, and I always find it actually hard to get to sessions because of all the meeting that happens in the hall. So for what it's worth, it's great to see you here, and hopefully next year we can be in person. Looking forward to the interaction today, though. A little bit about Emsi, if you're not familiar with us. We're a labor market firm focused on the intersection of people, education, and work. We want to use data to better support that ecosystem. We want to help people find the work they're looking for, the meaningful work they are looking for, help employers find the talent they need, and help institutions and learning providers facilitate that relationship. Our data covers about 99% of the workforce, from structured labor market data from government sources like the BLS to job posting data to data from personal professional profiles. So we have a lot of data about what's happening in the workplace that we're using to better inform those interactions. We do that through software, through consulting, through APIs, lots of different ways. And we work with a lot of different organizations from the groups I described. On the higher ed side, you can see folks like WGU and SNU. We have, sort of forward-thinking online institutions and small private schools as well. With a lot of Fortune 500 companies and public agencies too. Basically, anyone interested in that intersection of people, education, and work, and who needs data to make better decisions about it, we're likely working with. With that intro of and I should say I'm Luke Jankovic. I'm the EVP of Higher Ed at Emsi. So I lead our higher education practice, and I've had the privilege to partner with Kacey and the folks at WGU on this work. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kacey to talk a little bit about their story.
Great. Thanks so much, Luke. And thank you for all of you attending this session. We know that you had lots of options to choose from. So thanks for spending a little bit of time with us to learn more about the work that we're doing both at Emsi and WGU. As Luke mentioned, my name is Kacey Thorne. I'm the Director of Skills Architecture at WGU. And I'd love to just give you a little bit of a background about who we are as an organization and how we've been approaching the work that we are around skills. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Western Governors University, we are a nonprofit. We were founded in 1997 by a group of 19 governors who really wanted to expand access to higher education for individuals who may not have access to it otherwise through traditional means. We are currently sitting at over 120,000 current students and over 200,000 graduates across all 50 states, which is a little bit mind-blowing to me. When I started with the org 8 years ago, we were at a 35,000 student base. So it's just grown exponentially in the last 8 years. We currently offer 60+ degrees across 4 different colleges, and we're really focused on high demand industry areas for the colleges that we have currently. And we're also a fully competency-based institution where we are fully online. We do have nursing and teacher preparation programs where there are clinicals that our students participate in, but outside of that, we are all online, all competency-based. We can go ahead and go on to the next slide. Perfect. So this is just a little snapshot of our student profile. We have 70% of our population who are keyed as have one or more underrepresented groups that they represent. 12% of our students are military. The median age of our students are 36 years old. And 85% of our students work while they are enrolled. So we're talking about a large portion of individuals who are currently working that are either seeking higher ed as a means to advance the current career that they are in, or they're looking for career change. This word, I think, is becoming very antiquated. I'm going to use it anyway for the lack of a better one, but when we talk about non-traditional students, non-traditional is the traditional. They are becoming the majority, and they have different needs. They need flexibility in program offerings. They need to be able to have education meet them where they are and when they can consume it. They need different types of access to education. Not everyone is serviced well by traditional brick and mortar institutions, or even necessarily 2 or 4 year institutions. So non-traditional students are seeking more opportunities than I think we have typically offered. So let's talk a little bit now about how the work and what we are doing at WGU really serves our learner base and the problems that we're trying to solve through what we call skills tagging. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey. About 2 years ago, WGU really started investing in ensuring that our programs were aligned to the skills that employers are looking for. And that it was aligned in a way that we were communicating about those skills using the language of the labor market. We are competency-based, so we have always been driven by industry demand in terms of the programs that we're offering, but as a higher ed institution, when we continue to hear surveys come back saying employers do not believe that higher ed as a system is preparing students with the skills that they need to be successful in the workplace, as an educator, that's heart-wrenching. That is why we are here. We want our students to be successful. And so WGU decided to really start taking this head on. So a couple of reasons for that: we want to make sure that our programs are not only more relevant, but that they are translated using a language of the labor market, and that we are talking about our programs through the lens of the skills that they are actually preparing our students for. By doing that, we really empower our students to be able to market themselves and to talk about the skills that they have based on the credentials that they have earned. We're also tagging all of our competencies and achievements to skills in order for us to be able to provide skills-denominated achievements to a learner's record. We've been heavily involved and focused this year in several of the White House pilots around the learning and employment record. And part of that work with the LERs, there's a major value add there when the achievements that a learner can surface to their record are skills denominated. The more skills focused we get, and the more granular we get in being able to describe the skills that our credentials hold, the closer we come to truly being able to offer personalized pathways that help our students identify what the goals are that they are trying to achieve, and the most appropriate path through an educational journey to help them get there. We also, with skills tagging, are able to provide educational and career compassing for our students. It's a bit of a enabler for wayfinding, so that we can tell a student, if this is a particular career that you are interested in, these are the skills that you need to build and develop, and these are educational programs or opportunities that you might want to look at to help you build those skills. So that is why we've really undertaken this effort in aligning and associating all of our curriculum with skills. So now that we've talked a little bit about the why, I'll just talk briefly about the how we did this. So we have an entire portfolio of curriculum that we wanted to translate to the language of skills. And so the way that we started doing that was we turned to Emsi for the labor market insights that they can provide. And very specifically, we turned to their analyst tools as well as the Skillify tool to help tell us what those skills are that employers are looking for, and to help signal us to have deeper conversations about our programs and what we might need to be including in them. So we took all of our competencies and assessments and started looking at them through the lens of the labor market insights from Emsi. And what we found was that we got some really powerful information back. Like just about every sector out there, every industry out there, communication is a high demand skill for individuals to have. But what communication looks like as a nurse versus a software engineer versus an air traffic controller looks very different in practice. So what we were able to do is take those signals from Emsi and then start having guided conversations with employer partners and hiring managers to say, when you say you need communication for a software engineer, tell us what you mean. And we would hear things back like, well, a software engineer needs to be able to communicate code changes to a group of technical and non-technical stakeholders. Or a nurse needs to be able to provide a patient status brief to the change nurse. That is really rich information that we then used at WGU to help us drive our new curriculum development, but to also craft what we refer to as a rich skills descriptor that includes those keywords from Emsi that the labor market's using to talk about skills, the job roles that those skills are applicable to, and then what the performance of that skill looks like in the context of those job roles, so that we really truly can use those rich skills descriptors as little data packages that we then can associate with all of our competencies and achievements at WGU that enable us to tell the students, this achievement, you've demonstrated these discrete skills. And if you're interested in this particular career pathway, here are the program offerings, curricular offerings, micro credentials, competencies that we have that can help support you on that pathway. So through the RSD creation, the insights that we got from Emsi, we then started to go through, as I mentioned, and associate all of our achievements with those rich skills descriptors that live as a tag on our achievements that we surface as open badges, in which we can include skills information as an alignment object within those badges to power some of these really important skills insights that we've been talking about. And our next step then, now that we have all of our curriculum and our achievements as open badges, where we have tagged all of those achievements to skills, we can now surface these to a student's learning and employment record, which will not only allow them the opportunity to tell their story about the skills that they have based on those credentials, but also allow for employer partners to be able to search for and locate students with the skills that they need to fill open positions. So I think the next screen is just going to give you a bit of a snapshot of what one of the badges look like. If we could just go back one, Luke. Right here is an example of a WGU skills denominated achievement. You can see this is specifically for our competency of creating databases with SQL. And underneath this, where you see the alignments section of this badge, SQL or SQL scripts and advanced data manipulation language, those are the signals that we were getting from Emsi about the skills that employers were looking for. And what you see listed underneath that is that contextualization, the rich skills descriptor that says what the student actually was able to do with that skill, how they applied it, and why it was that they ended up receiving that badged achievement. So all of our achievements at WGU are currently tagged with high value skills from the insights that we have gained from Emsi, and then are contextualized with rich skills descriptors that we can include on our achievement badges. So pulling this all together, this just gives you a little snapshot of what that skills information is really allowing us to do. the rich skills descriptor that I was speaking about before is really that layer of skills data that then can have applications built on top of it. So the skills data can be aligned to achievements, which can then be used to surface a marketplace of skill achievements and providers of those achievements. So our hope is that the more skills-based other institutions of education and employers become, the easier it will be to show students learning opportunities both within and outside of WGU to help them pursue their career goals. Additionally, those achievements live as part of the student's record of achievement, that is that learner-owned record, that we then can build an application in the next 12 months. This is on WGU's roadmap and kind of like our next step in the value add for students, is that we're providing them with an achievement wallet that they can actually use to surface their individual achievements and create basically a verified digital resume that they can share with prospective employers or other educational institutions. And I think that is it for me, Luke.
It is awesome. Thank you so much. So let me go ahead here, see if I can get this to work. So we go back to that, that step in Kacey's slide about skill tagging to curriculum. The first was identifying. So identifying within those competencies and those learning areas, what labor market skills were already being taught. And I think that was our kind of first core project with you, was, hey, what are we teaching from a labor market perspective and how do we surface that? So I'm going to focus on just a real practical demonstration of what that really means and looks like, to add some meat to the bones of what we've been talking about. Whenever you say surface the skills you're teaching, the first question you should ask is, well, which language, which taxonomy? What are you talking about? Are you talking about ONET communication or IBM communication, or any number of ways of describing the same thing? And for Emsi, that language is our open skills library. So what we've done over the last few years is use the hundreds of millions of job postings we have and the hundreds of millions of employee profiles we have, and sourced from that conversation about work the skills, knowledge areas, the things that are important to both parties. And we call those skills. They can be credentials, they can be, again, knowledge areas, technologies, but we have a sort of a broad definition of skills. There are 30,000 currently, and we update them every 2 weeks. So it's like, you can think of it as an employment lexicon that people pull words from to have a conversation. So from a curriculum perspective, the question is, in the way we're describing our own learning at content, what we're trying to teach, how does it translate into the labor market? I will say about Emsi Open Skills, they're free to the public. We've opened up our library. The APIs are available. There's a page for each skill with relevant metadata, like how's the skill been trending posting wise over the last year, who are top employers, what are top jobs, and what are other related skills. So we are really working to try and contribute to this interoperable infrastructure movement that's happening to make the ecosystem around hiring and learning and switching jobs far more effective. Kacey's talked about the learning employment record. We're super excited about that. And we see a real need for that infrastructure and have contributed this Emsi Open Skills library to that project. So if you have any questions about that, you're free to go to this site, skills.emsidata.com, to see how it works. Feel free to reach out to me too. But when we say the language of the labor market in this context, we mean the Emsi skill library sourced in that way. So with that library, with that lexicon of skills from the conversation, we like to describe skillifying. So we take content and we skillify it. So we read the text of a syllabus in this perspective, in this instance, or a competency description, or any size of learning content, to again pull out from it the labor market skills that are being taught. And we find that this is really helpful, in particular around one of the things that I think many educators are a little distressed about right now, which is this idea that we're moving to a skills-based hiring world and totally away from a degree-based hiring world, as if degrees don't have skills in them, right? So what we want to do is not say it's skills or degrees, but what skills are you already teaching in your degrees and your credentials, regardless of the size of them? It could be a big four-year degree, it could be a micro-credential, but what are the labor market skills that are there? So why would we do this? Why do we at MC think this is important? Well, first off, when we understand what you're teaching in terms of skills within the actual content of your program, we can help show you what the employers are looking for and better align that content to meet the needs of employers. When your learning content is skill searchable, it's easier to market it to learners.
Okay.
I'm going through and muting folks here as they pop up. There we go. When you understand not just the job an employer is asking for, but the specific skill shapes they're looking for, you can better engage them. And when your students, to Kacey's fantastic point, have a resume that or learning record that translates all the way down in a verified way to the skills they've learned, they're much better equipped to connect to the employers who need them. So let me show you what we do. And if you're not muted, please go ahead and mute yourself. So I'm going to use an example. This is the technology we use to surface skills. Let's say I want to put in a drafting course, an AutoCAD course, and I've got the descriptive text from the syllabi. So our technology from this descriptive text about a drafting class reads from what's described the labor market skills that are being talked about, and not just in terms of searching for a specific skill by keyword. We're reading the semantic context, the words around it, to build our confidence that that skill is actually being referenced. So these are skills, labor market skills, that this specific course description is teaching. When we take a series of units like that and group them in, we can make a degree. I'll use an example of an information technology degree here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 courses. And we can line the skill shape of that degree up against what employers are asking for in the market. And we can see which skills are being taught that align with market outcomes, ranked by demand. And really importantly, which ones that are not being taught. So as we think about, hey, this is our degree, our computer science degree, our nursing degree, whatever it might be, this is what we're teaching. And based off that skill shape, effectively, these are other in-demand skills that are related that the institution should think about adding to this program or credential. Since we know what's being taught outside of this group or degree, we can suggest the specific courses or units that fill skill gaps to make this more labor market relevant. So we're using the Emsi skill library and then our skill extraction technology to surface the labor market skills being taught, and using that capability to quickly allow institutions and curriculum developers to measure the labor market relevance of the coursework. And that work with WGU then fed into all of those other things that Kacey talked about. And what I love about it is not only that it feeds all the way through, if we do this right, to better outcomes for students. So with that, Kacey and I I want to open up for questions, but we're going to start with a couple questions that we've prepared. The first one is, so you're WGU, great. Of course you can do this. Kacey, how do you respond?
So my response to that is any steps towards a skills-based direction, both in hiring and education processes, no matter how small those steps are, is a step in the right direction. And, you know, WGU, I understand, is operating at its own kind of scale and capacity. But even as an individual professor at a traditional university, to be able to look at your syllabus and say, we are, this is a 21st century literature course. And these are the things that my students are doing in the course and some of the thinking that we are engaging in together. What are those critical thinking skills that they're developing? What kind of systems thinking skills might they be developing as part of their engagement with this course? So it doesn't have to be a huge lift. We just really need to do better, I think, at challenging ourselves to think about what those skills are that are actually being covered in our coursework. When I think back to my own higher ed journey and my undergrad degree, like, I don't know that I really understood that as an English lit major, I really was building those critical thinking skills, the systems thinking skills, and oftentimes learners aren't making those connections on their own. And I would also say the same thing of employers. You know, any step towards a skills-based hiring direction is a step in the right direction, no matter how small. So thinking about job descriptions, how can we tighten those up and be more specific about the skills that we want someone to have? If we are saying that a degree is a poor proxy for us in terms of telling what a student can actually do, then let's make a commitment to start hiring based on the skills that someone holds. And then lastly, you know, to the point of employers as well, let's start, you know, taking advantage of the skills that someone is building, no matter where they've developed them. We're developing skills across an entire lifetime of education and learning and in our personal interests. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be on the job application of those skills, or even discrete skills maybe that someone has picked up across a higher ed journey. Like, where can we find opportunities to give credit where credit is due and to make hires based on the skills that someone holds, no matter where they gained them? That was a long answer to a very short question, Luke.
Short questions are typically big questions. Like, what's the meaning of life? That's a short question. So what do you think are the biggest blockers to doing this from your perspective?
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest blocker is just where to start and getting started. I think, you know, the example that I gave before is just really thinking through and helping students understand what the skills are that they are demonstrating and building as part of their coursework is a step in the right direction. One of the blockers that we've had at WGU in terms of making this happen at the scale that we need it to happen at for really like systemic change is it comes down to technology and systems being able to talk to one another and to be able to speak a skills language. And so the work of the Open Skills Network and the development of some of the open tools coming out of that group is really exciting, because technology does continue to be a barrier. Skills, the technology really to enable this skills-based hiring and education future exists. The problem is those technologies are just siloed from one another. And so I think that is one of the bigger barriers to this happening at scale. But I think there are, you know, initiatives happening through Open Skills Network and the T3 initiatives that are going to help break some of those barriers down.
Totally. And I think that's honestly why we're participating, excited about it, is how do we invest forward into a new infrastructure and stop trying to capitalize on having a list of skills like that. That doesn't actually fix this talent ecosystem problem that exists there. So, Kacey, any questions that you saw? I wasn't able to monitor the chat while I was talking. Any questions you saw in there that you want to pull out in particular?
Yeah, so there were some really great ones in here. I think particularly one about IT firms and wanting experienced IT personnel. Even if the students are trained in an educational setting, you know, we know a barrier sometimes can be the actual like job history or work experience that someone can have. And I don't have a good answer for that. And I think it will take a commitment, I think, at large on the part of major employers to start shifting the way that they're thinking about that. And why shouldn't a student's, you know, demonstration, be it through internship, college project, personal project, where they've actually been able to demonstrate that they have the skills that are needed for that job role, be inferior to actual like on the job experience. So I do think there is some antiquated notions of where skills need to be obtained that will need to be overcome, and I don't have a solution for it, but it is, I would say, another barrier in the equation. Let's see what else.
I saw one question here that's easy to answer, which is who owns the LER, Kacey?
Well, so that seems easy to answer. You know, we always talk about the learner and employment record, and it is a learner-owned record of achievement, but there are lots of implications in terms of data and data privacy and ownership that I think play into that quite a bit. And so I am less versed in the LER speak to address that head on. But what I would say is that the intention of the achievement wallet that we're building at WGU on top of LER technology, you know, whether that ends up being blockchain or what that blockchain solution is, the wallet application that we are building and the credentials that are issued to it will be learner owned and portable with that individual across institutions and even other achievement applications into other universities or employer systems where that student ends up traveling across their career or learning journey.
In theory, that wallet is something, if you guys build that application, it is a wallet, and the currency is the individuals. And if they want to switch wallets or figure out how to move that around, they could over their lifetime, which I think is a exciting opportunity to move the data ownership in the long haul to that individual. I think one of the questions about that in particular was about people who aren't adults yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we figured that out.
Yeah. There's a question here that I see that's interesting from Tara. What technologies would you recommend? One of the like anecdotes I always share about our experience at WGU, it's kind of like the dirty secret I did not want to admit to anybody as we were doing a lot of this work, was that our skills library and all of those rich skills descriptors that we were maintaining, we were doing in Google Sheets. And as I started to share that information with like really large employers, other higher ed institutions, I found out very quickly that is very common. Very common. And so one of my, the most exciting things for me coming out of the work of the Open Skills Network is the development of an open skills management tool that will allow for the creation, editing, maintenance of skills libraries that are made up of rich skills descriptors, so that other organizations will have the opportunity to create those libraries, link them to dynamic labor market insights, and to really use those as the powerful skills data sets that they need to attach to job descriptions and curricula. It is very exciting, selfishly, that tool will be available to get us out of Google Sheets sooner rather than later.
We still love you, Google Sheets. You do.
We do.
So for some reason, my Zoom account was downgraded. So we have less than a minute. If your question did not get answered, you have our emails right here. So feel free to shoot us an email. And I think I copied the text of the chat, so we'll try and follow up with folks. Kacey, thank you so much. Hopefully, well, I appreciate it. Really appreciate the work you're doing and seeing it all the way through to student value.
Likewise, and please feel free to reach out with any questions that you might have. Happy to chat anytime.
Thanks all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah.